I found a pea out on the table there, and I took the liberty of grabbing it. I went to other schools, but when anyone from Cummins is at West Lafayette, we are all boiler up. So, so delighted to be here. Actually, I'm representing my boss, who was invited to be here. He said, "Mike, could you help put together a story?" And delighted to. He met and found out, oh, I'm not even in the country today, so could you give it? And I said, I can't give it as good as you, Ignacio, but I'll do my best. So I'm trying to represent Ignacio Garcia. He's very interested in this program, and of course, supply chain. He's our Chief Manufacturing and Purchasing Officer for Cummins. And I don't know if we got it completely wrong, but we are not talking about opportunities at the micro level for Cummins. And we're not talking about, brilliant economists right before me. We're not talking about the business cycle. We're pretty sure the business cycle hasn't been repealed. We're going to have a recession. So we're not looking at the next. So what we did was put together, well, what are we concerned about? We're in it for the long haul. And so we're talking about U.S. manufacturing, and from a global perspective, from a macro perspective. I saw a headline just this morning saying, oh, manufacturing is gone in this kind of automotive sector, and it is amazing how, all right, nobody's recording anything, right? How clueless the author was. What do you mean the auto sector is at the same, the thinking there was, oh, Detroit. And so this whole notion of the U.S. auto sector is Detroit. Well, that's just Subaru. So they don't count. Manufacturing is much more global, much more, and the amount that this notion that manufacturing doesn't have a bright future in the United States is just so wrong that we wanted to put together a story on that. So this is the one slide. I'm not here to try to sell anything, but I'm from Cummins, and I should be standing somewhere else?
No, I just need to give you this. I remember it.
Sorry. Yeah.
When you said it's going to be recorded, it should be recorded. So your recording statement triggers the fact that we need to record it. Thank you.
Thanks very much. So this is, I'm going to have to behave myself. Good afternoon. Cummins, I hope many of you have heard of Cummins. We're a global company. We're just down the street. We were founded in Columbus, Indiana, back in 1919, 90th anniversary, and we are the largest independent manufacturer of diesel engines. So that's what a lot of people think of is, oh, you make truck engines. Yes, we do, and we are the biggest there, but actually truck engines, those big diesels that are in those Class 8 trucks, that represents now a staggering 15% of the company. So there's a lot more to Cummins than truck engines, but it's really almost a rebranding of Cummins as a power company, and Cummins is a global company, but Cummins is a very proud independent United States company. So what we wanted to talk about was, okay, share some perspectives on key manufacturing trends and the state of U.S. manufacturing. We're going to go beyond this recession, U.S. recession, global recession. So let's pick a year, 2030, 20 years out. Future challenges, product, process, and people is what the message is all about. So here's my thesis. It's different. I'm a manufacturing guy, and I have a funny title now for a manufacturing guy, sustainability. I think it's incredibly important, and you have to have a system strategy, a long-term strategy, a global strategy. So the thesis here is that if you are any size manufacturer, and I want to stress that because the small and medium-sized manufacturers still represents the lion's share of jobs, and it will be still in 2030. So even those small companies need to be thinking very differently to be successful. They need to be thinking about how they integrate with their life cycle of their products. Do they have sustainable processes? Just this morning we had a comment from the Duke person of, well, why does Indiana, it's one of the highest, actually it trades off I think with Wisconsin, the highest share of our state GDP is due to the manufacturing sector. And one of the theories she advances is cheap energy. And I agree. That's one of the reasons why manufacturing is so strong in the Midwest. And then, of course, our where did he go? He bops around a lot. There you are. And he actually slightly corrected her. Yes, it's cheap power, but it's also places like Purdue University. And that's also very true. Great research. But Purdue is one of the premier manufacturing universities in the nation and in the world. Yeah, that's all part of it. Now, if you don't have sustainable processes, if carbon regulation is coming down the pike, suddenly I'm paying 4.9 cents per kilowatt hour for Duke Power in southern Indiana. What if it doubles? It will double. What if it triples? Now, suddenly, will my manufacturing operation not only not be competitive, but not be sustainable? That's the sort of thinking that you have to do now versus waiting for these supply disruptions. And then finally, you got to be thinking about the most valuable resource, the people. So the setup here is recognize natural resources exist in fixed quantities. We are already, depending on who you talk to, we are already beyond the sustainable use in our planet. And so if you look at the two constraints here, one of them is from reduced supply. Gee, we know that, right? Reduced supply, prices go up. But the other one, this is the change, is regulation. Now, for us, one of the biggest drivers for our new products isn't our customers. It's this organization called the EPA. So the emission regulations. It's been an extraordinary. Basically, it's zero emissions out of engines these days. So fuel economy standards are the emerging thing. This is the first year that fuel economy standards hit commercial engines, but emerging carbon regulations. So it's not only the change on the pricing side, but all these worldwide regulations. The resources, even fresh water, we take it for granted. In many parts of the world, it's not, and it is a big deal. It's going to be very much even a larger deal, because manufacturing operations are resource intensive. They use a lot of water. And that's something we take for granted. That's something we can no longer take for granted. Even timber, it's being depleted now at an unsustainable rate. The stability, if you want a long-term sustainable manufacturing operation, you aren't in an island. You are part of the ecosystem. You are part of the economy, and everything is interconnected. So a nation cannot have a sustainable economy separate from the environment. And that's this environmental piece here. So this is coming from the manufacturing die, not with too many engineering degrees. This is not coming from the person from School of Natural Resources. It is not just a tagline. It is a real part, and everyone in business needs to be much more aware of how, especially manufacturing operations, with their need for resource-intensive processing, is going to be even more sensitive to these trends. Finally, this I think this was a clip from Seattle World Trade, shall we say, disagreements, but recognize that whether fueled by poverty, corruption, inequity, this social destabilization is also a large and growing impact to the sustainability of anywhere. You can't just set up an operation and think, oh, rule of law, that'll take care of it. No, you have to be cognizant of what are the living conditions, and will you have a stable base? And moreover, it's not just cherry picking that. Your operation has a responsibility to be helping the social side, the living standard side. So everyone's seen this, the three-legged side of sustainability: business, global society, and environment. This is a slide I put together that my argument here is that sustainable manufacturers need to be thinking the bottom are some of the things that we have to do to be in compliance. So things like REACH, what I'm terming the Full-Time Employment Act in the EU for materials scientists and lawyers, but that REACH, it's an EU reg, but now it's worldwide. So all of these things are compliance. The successful manufacturers are thinking about beyond compliance, and we think that the really smart ones are thinking about taking leadership roles in doing some things that are very, very proactive, not because they have to, not because they're positioning, not because they're putting ads on the television, but because they think this is the right thing to be, because we expect to be in business 50 years from now. What do we need to be still in a leadership position 50 years from now? So that's my setup. Quickly on the product side, emissions are big. This is a graph of US 2010. This little graph over here is the two things on diesels regulated are oxides of nitrogen and then particulate matter. And you can see it's gone down in the late 80s, and then back in 2002 was a big year, 2004. And so it's been a matter of, it went down, by 90%. And now it went down by another 70%. And this year, it went down by another 30%. And in fact, it's changed because these regulations, arguably, they are very tough to meet. But this has been one of the reasons why Cummins has been very successful, is that with technology leadership, we've been in a better position worldwide. And so, ironically, this clean diesel phenomenon has been the best thing for Cummins. And we've seen some of our competitors not be some of our competitors these days. The point of the graph is this old notion of, well, the US and the EU are where regulations are most serious, and then these other countries, they don't care, or they're willing to take something, forget that thinking. It's much more global, and emerging countries, emerging markets, they aren't 10 years behind. They're just one step behind, or they're actually demanding the same sort of regulations. Now, that's on the normal regulated side, the NOx and the particulate matter. The emerging side, which we already see in the EU, but we're starting to see in the US, is on CO2 regulation, and you see that on two ways. One of which is you regulate carbon dioxide or you regulate fuel economy. For this, it's the same thing. So the amount of diesel you're burning, it's a physics equation, you're going to get that out. But the exciting thing here is because of regulation, things that from a pricing standpoint wouldn't make sense now do. And so Cummins is active in each one of these areas. And so that the truck of the future, so to speak, there is still lots more efficiency operations. Roughly 30% of the energy coming out when you combust something goes out the shaft, 30% is waste energy going out the exhaust, and 30% is waste energy going out the radiator. Well, as fuel or as regulations hit, suddenly it makes much more sense to start using advanced technologies to capture that. And so this thing is very exciting, and I think all that it's doing is it is accelerating a technology that just makes no sense if diesel is at $3 a gallon. Makes perfect sense if diesel is at $3 a gallon and you have to have it because of the emission regulation. So part of this is the DOE Secretary, Dr. Chu, came down. He made the announcement for a whole slew of advanced R&D, and he chose Cummins to make the announcement, and Cummins has gained the lion's share of these advanced R&D awards. So these are some of the technologies that we're doing for super efficient engines. I do want to make a plug for my colleagues in power gen. CO2 is bad. Well, not if you're tomato. And so these are ultra clean gens. These are cogen, and actually they call it trigen because they use it to create electricity. They sell it on the grid. They take the heat and they extract energy from the heat. And also they take the ultra clean emissions and pipe it into the greenhouse, and the tomatoes love it. And so this is a huge growth area for us. But the irony is, huge in Europe, not huge in the United States, because we still have too many barriers to hooking up to the grid and things. So that's on product. On process, a couple quick slides. One is this notion of manufacturing is dead. No, the world, manufacturing is still, this notion of, well, we outsource that operation, so we don't do as much. Well, It may not be as vertically integrated as it was before, but somebody's making it. And so if you look at the total supply chain, the U.S. is still the world's largest manufacturer. Surprises people to say that. And it's much more global, and China is growing. Of course it is. But as growth goes, as export goes, we think that this is all very exciting. Cummins is expanding in Brazil, in Russia, in China, in India, and in the United States. So global company, and we think global trade is a great thing. So what will it look like 20 years from now? More of the same, but we have to make the investments in advanced manufacturing, productivity, and innovation. That's the whole secret here. And gee, 20 years out, the US, Germany, China, India, Japan, they are still industrial powerhouses. I don't know if US is number 1, it may be number 2, but it's not number 12. So argument number 1. 2 is productivity. The whole secret of manufacturing is productivity. And people underestimate the level of innovation required. The reason why arguably our standard of living is so high is because I can go out and buy something, and it's remarkable to look at this device at the price that it's being purchased. Well, why is that? Part of it's design, right? But no, it's because of it. We are incredibly efficient on the ability to manufacture things. So this notion of, well, there's not that many jobs in manufacturing. No, it's just like this same story in agriculture. 90 years ago, 80% of the workforce was working in agriculture. Right now, it's 2.6%. Last time I looked, Americans are not starving. You know, most of us could. Okay, let's all raise our hands. All of us could we could lose a few pounds, and that's the real message here about manufacturing. Is it isn't labor intensive, it's innovation, it's productivity. And so 20 years out, thesis here is that it is the norm, the way of life. And lean, agile manufacturing, we don't call it anything else because that is simply just manufacturing. Finally, we still have an image problem. Ironically, when I go to China, manufacturing is seen very differently. Manufacturing engineers are treated with surprising respect, and you come here and, oh, you're a manufacturing engineer. Well, you weren't smart enough to be in finance, you know. And it's folks. Perhaps because we don't have a TV show in the United States about manufacturing, there's still a growing image problem with it, and part of it is employment is a premium role. Whether you are a college degree and you're in it, or you are a shop floor worker, and we'll get to a different point in a second here. It's premium compensation, and it is not a dirty work environment. The famous Diego Rivera murals of the truck, lovely, but I think it does manufacturing a disservice by painting this image that manufacturing is dark, dirty, unsafe, and unhealthy. And look at this graph in terms of safety, in terms of manufacturing. 20 years out, it's sites, and disclaimer here, Manufacturing is Cool is a nice website. There's a bunch of them. I'm an officer with the Society of Manufacturing Engineers, and this is our website to talk to young kids about manufacturing. So lastly here, this innovation. We are lagging here. We will not remain the innovation leader if we don't have more scientists and engineers and change this impact of manufacturing. As 20 years out, manufacturing will be there somewhere, but the type of manufacturing today, we're very good at machining very little, near net shaped castings and such. In the future, maybe the technology is completely different with nanomanufacturing. Maybe it would be silly to take away materials to find your final thing. Rather, this whole notion of additive manufacturing is a very, very serious prospect. So I want to plug a colleague, friend of mine, John Sutherland. This is his slide. This is he's at Purdue University, and we need to think very differently about manufacturing enterprises than material loops. So to this notion of make a great product, and by the way, there are Cummins engines out there in service 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 years, and yeah, we'll still sell parts for them. That's one way, but if you go to Europe with required take-back, recycling, end-of-life vehicle sorts of things, the argument is, especially 20 years out, that will be the norm of green manufacturing is one piece, but recovery, reuse, remanufacturing is a bright spot for Caterpillar is a great company with a wonderful plant just down the street. They have a wonderful story, just like Cummins, on remanufacturing as the most optimal way, lowest resource to put new life into a product. So 20 years out, we don't talk about green manufacturing. That's the norm. It's simply the way we manufacture things. And I'm not done, I guess. Lastly, the people side. This is the most important part. And gee, 10% plus unemployment, we are hiring people and we have a problem finding the right skill sets. So young people are not prepared for a manufacturing job. We are lagging in the world. We need to take it much more seriously. And math and science is a real issue. A coming slide will go, but this notion of get a high school degree, go onto a manufacturing floor and make things, that isn't the type of manufacturing that is in place these days. So 20 years out, I believe that there will be a strong desire. I think there is right now for let's have the United States make things again. Not that we haven't, but there's that perception, but we need to resource some things. And that simply the desire for high-paying jobs, I think will start to direct people that, hey, I should get that associate's degree at Purdue or that bachelor's degree at Purdue because I want to be a manufacturing associate. So that's the segue for here, is that employment needs much, much higher skills, much higher than people think. And so the emerging things, NAM is this manufacturing skills certification system. It's going to be a big emerging thing over the next few years. And arguably right now in many of our sectors, the typical job out on our floor requires an associate's degree. I think that's going to be the norm in manufacturing. And then finally, attracting and retaining, that's our biggest piece. And the argument here is you're not just hiring and their skills are static. The company has to make an investment in supporting employees, associates, on an ongoing basis for continual skill refreshment, and that's one of the best ways to retain people. So in summary, on the product side, we're going to be thinking about products very differently. They've got to be environmentally sound, not just meeting some regulations, but from a product side, their use, the resources to make them, but the resources to have them in use, plus at the end of the life, could they be upgraded, modular design, or at least the materials reused, remanufactured, or reused for other products. On the process side, our competitiveness depends upon productivity. I saw some exciting charts out there about lean manufacturing being applied. There's the one at Bosch, if you saw that. That's very, very critical in the shop floor of the future. Efficiency is absolutely paramount, minimal energy and no waste. And then the most important thing for manufacturing operations, the people, the sustainable manufacturers. We have to not only invest in our people, but invest in the communities in which we do business. So that is something very, very different, but I hope you found it interesting and helpful.
Thank you. So I think what we'll do is we'll finish all three speakers. Thank you.
And I saw your hand.
Let me get things set up for Patsy.